This is the one time tonight I get to do Dick Clark and Casey Kasem all rolled into one. I remember I was working for a radio station down in San Clemente, which was owned by a large church in Orange County. And I got to meet the wonderful young guy, he was young then, still is, by the name of James Caggegi. He worked in the tape manufacturing department, I worked in the production department. And one of the things I noticed about James was that not only the humble spirit, which I saw and everybody else saw, and that's an interesting way to see that, well, I see your humble spirit, but he was also very transparent, also very vulnerable, and I say that as a positive attribute. As we got to grow in our friendship, they produced a series of songs with a fella who has worked with a lot of musicians, had worked with a lot of writers, but it was that project called The Weary Pilgrim that really kind of shaped and molded my musical interests in the last 7 or 8 years. James, kind of in a nutshell, how has working with John molded and shaped your music?
Well, I think more than anything, it's challenged me that to, through my music, kind of portray what we're trying to say through our lyrics. And John has a way of, through his music, speaking what the words are saying, and I think that's had a big effect on both of us, Rebekah and I.
One of the vocal styles of the 80s, which has changed so much over the years, was voices like Enya. We all heard of Enya. Voices that are breathy, filled up with, as they say, electronic reverb. I'm a product of the 80s, so I enjoy fiddling with the buttons there. We'll talk about that, John, next. But times have changed and eras have changed, but you know, the classics always remain. And I consider not only the production techniques, but the vocal and the vocal range and the airiness of Rebekah's vocal a classic. And that's something that will always stay around. But Rebekah, you have come into communion in a artistical kind of way with your husband, James, to produce songs, to write songs, to perform songs. But how has that not only helped you to grow, but how has that changed your life, and how has that skewed the way you maybe see things in this world?
I think more than anything, through James's relationship with the Lord, and that coming out in his music and his heart and in his service to me as his wife, has caused me to soften as a person. And I think even vocally, it's helped me soften, and just to have that freedom he allows me to have when I sing, and to sing unto the Lord. It's caused me to grow and a depth to take place. And I think the biggest blessing about being able to sing with my husband and to lead worship with him is just that we've gotten into such a tight lock as far as being able to, as you can tell, I missed my intro. And normally, if we were just singing by ourselves at church or whatever, he would just totally cover that for me. And we just are a team, and that's really, it's safe. It's a safe thing. And so that gives me the freedom to kind of step out and try new things. And I feel very safe and comfortable when I sing with him and lead worship with him. And that's helped develop my own ministry as well.
One of the things that James and Rebekah did back in 1993 was to take part in a various projects, rendition of an album called Your Holiness Surrounds Me. My good friend Scott Brenner, who lives in Texas now, produced that album, but he did so with the arrangements of John Andrew Schreiner. That was the first time, I believe, that John got to work with James and Rebekah, but that wasn't the first time I met John. This was really interesting. I was mixing sound for a wedding over in Irvine for what was at that time a roommate of mine who was getting married, and John was to play piano. His car broke down. It was a horrible car. Never did work right. And another fellow by the name of Fernando Ortega had to give him a ride to the church. It's the first time I met John. He had very long hair. And I always enjoyed the music and the productions and the artistical value of his albums, of his productions. And here I am mixing for the guy. All that aside, the combination of John with James and Rebekah produced 2 albums and has produced a lifetime of music for myself, and I know a lot of other people. Tell us about that communion, John.
Somehow I had a cassette of a couple of their songs. I don't know how I got it, but
I sent it to you. Yeah.
figures. And I remember I was in a horrible mood. Those of you that work in Christian music or parachurch groups and things know how lousy it can be sometimes when you get cold to the things of God, and it gets frustrating during the week. And I was on my way to church, and I put this cassette on that I'd been given, and I heard it. I started crying. It touched me so much, and I just couldn't get over it. So when you came up to my church or something, right? And I saw them, and I think I expressed that I wanted to be able to work with them in some capacity, because to me, it's very hard to get around musically and do things dishonestly, and have it be anything that lasts for a while. And lots of styles come and go, and it's the personality, the heart of the person, whether they're boastful or arrogant or whether they're humble or whatever, or that I think people remember. And I think James and Rebekah's music is an expression of who they are, and it's not phony, and that affected me so much. And I wanted to work with them, just to have a chance to be around and work on music that I could feel like this is not trying to put a religious face on anything, but could come before God and also the community of believers with something that's honest and enjoyable.
Something that's honest and enjoyable is something that I call the music of James and Rebekah, along with John Andrew Schreiner.